We've been exploring the East Texas oil field. 2 weeks ago, we started off with the ultimate source for oil field information, the East Texas Oil Museum at Kilgore College.
Oh, absolutely. We have our life-size recreation of a town booming in oil.
And life-size because they're real vehicles in here, I guess from the period, right?
Absolutely. We have a plethora of antiques and collectibles. All were of the period, and most of them were donated by the community here of East Texas.
Oh, wow.
This is what the East Texas field looks like underground. On the surface, during the boom, we had all of these oil derricks. There was over 28,000 active wells in the field at the height.
Look at all these things. That is unbelievable how many of them there were all over East Texas.
They were everywhere. And then, of course, they had to drill down through each one of these layers. The geological formation is called a pinch-out trap, and this was the first pinch-out trap that was found. And that's why the earlier major oil companies, when they came in the 1920s and drilled, didn't have success, is they were looking for the wrong kind of a field. But you can see how far down they had to get into the earth to get to that oil layer.
So that's oil there. That would be the oil.
That is the oil. It's about 3,600 feet down there.
Whoa.
Next, we traveled to Joinerville to the Gaston Museum to get a glimpse of how the oil strike impacted the community and to look back at life in East Texas during the boom. Self-service.
Self-service. Mr. White used to sit on his front porch. He had a metal box out front. Customers would come up and he'd say, "Put your money in the tank or in the box, fill your car up," and he would watch them. Okay, welcome to the snack shop, or what's left of the snack shop. That's the kitchen. The kitchen was the hub of the snack shop. Mr. and Mrs. White stayed in this room 90% of the time that the doors were open.
Last week, we traveled to New London to learn the story of how natural gas from the East Texas oil field played a role in the worst school disaster in Texas history.
These two children are standing very innocently in 1930 in front of the Daisy Bradford blowing in. And the story is that in 1937, on that fateful day in March, Bobby, Kate, and Perry were going to skip school. And Daddy caught them, and he punished them, and he sent them back to school. And the tragedy of it is, Bobby Kate was seriously injured, but Perry was killed. Daddy could only identify Perry by a little red knife that he had in his pocket. And Daddy never got over it.
Texas is full of lost history, from lost cemeteries to abandoned buildings, from the infamous to the obscure. Hitch a ride and travel across the Lone Star State, looking for hints of Texas' colorful past, our lost history. This is Expedition Texas, and we're gonna find it.
We've covered a lot about how East Texas grew around the oil boom. Later, we're headed to explore the ruins of a necessary component in the oil business, a refinery located in Arp, Texas. But first, how exactly does that black gold become the fuel for our cars, the kerosene for your old lamp, the fuel for that jet in the sky? Well, the Chinese were among the first to refine oil as early as the 1st century. As time went by, the techniques were improved and expanded, and by the time we were drilling for oil in America, the basic processes were established. The simplest explanation is that crude oil is distilled to create the different products we get from it. As seen in the graphic, different products come from different levels of this distillation, and this explains the columns that have been seen and used in this process since some of the earliest photographs we've seen. In East Texas, the oil boom brought entrepreneurs in all related industries. The small town of Arp, Texas benefited as well. In 1931, the first successful well was drilled near Arp, and the McMurray Refining Company was soon established. Later owned by Premier Oil Company, the refinery was abandoned in the 1950s. But today, along with Arp Mayor Terry Lowry, we're headed out to explore the old refinery at Arp. This week, we're continuing our story on the East Texas oil field. We've learned about the refining process in an effort to prepare us for our trip to the ruins of the old Premier Refinery in Arp, Texas. Here's Arp Mayor Terry Lowry.
The old refinery was put in right after we had the opening of the oil boom in the 30s. I think the refinery was built somewhere around 31, maybe 32, something of that nature. As it progressed, and the oil boom was growing, so that the town was growing, we got up to about 2,500 people, and it was there because it was on the railroad. It took the crude oil, and of course they had to burn some of the byproducts off, but it was to refine the crude. Some of it was shipped out of here on rail cars, turning it into gasoline, diesel, things of that nature. I know that there are several buildings still there. They just happen to be at the further extensions of both ends of the property. What was out there, of course, like I said, was the old office building. There was another huge shop building out there for major equipment. There was still some of the pits that were out there when I was younger. We used to play out there. That we had, I had buddies that lived out close to where the service station was, and my dad ran the service station for a number of years in the 50s and early 60s. And with that, we would go up in there and we'd roam, we'd fish out in one of the ponds out there, because somehow there were fish in it, or we would play Army or stuff like that.
Hey, Mayor, how's it going?
It's going good, going good. Good seeing you.
It's good to see you too, man. We've been here in Arp before, but as we were kind of looking around one day and then ran across the ruins of the old refinery out there, and I didn't realize exactly how long that place had been abandoned.
It's been there just abandoned, and there was a lot of stuff out there over the years. Even when I was a kid growing up, we used to go up in there and play, and there was tons of stuff up there that you wouldn't expect to still be there.
So I understand there's still a lot out there to see. You've talked to the property owner. There is someone that owns this property currently, and he's given us permission to go out there and explore, and you're going to show us around what used to be like a big playground for you, I guess.
Yes, it was like a big playground.
All right, well, let's head out there and see it.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Well, where we're at here, would this be considered the edge of town?
This would roughly have been the edge of town back in the day, yes.
Okay, all right, and this probably at one time, I've seen these refineries and I've seen the old photos of this refinery, probably looked like a little city in itself out here.
Right, yeah, and it went from roughly out here where those trees are, all the way to down past where you see that big tree that's kind of torn all up.
Yeah.
So it was back down in there also.
Kind of give me the lay of the land here. What was out here?
All right, there was a service station here.
Okay.
A service station there.
All right.
And then this was a cafe.
Okay.
Okay. And then everything back here, back when it was, the refinery was all there. But even when I was a kid back in the 50s, there was still a lot of it there. As you can see, there's still some that's standing today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're probably going to hear this a lot. We're right here on Highway 135, just outside the city proper of Arp, and what looks like, if it weren't for these structures that are out through here, just an old field. But the abandoned structures really get our attention. So let's head out and check it out. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right.
All this structure up here, and you can tell looks like there's some concrete over here by this tree. Large cable.
Yeah, wow.
These are things that have been here for no telling how many years.
Yeah, right.
You can still see the concrete for where that was part of the loading dock area for when the rail cars would come up. They had to have an area where they had sidetrack. It was elevated, and then they also had areas where the tracks came through so that they could get the things loaded and then be able to send it back onto the main track.
That's the main track. Just
that is the main track right there. It was here long before I was.
Bank bag. Let's check and see if the deposit's still in here.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Nothing.
We're in Arp, Texas, exploring the remains of the old Premier Refinery there. The location started life in the 1930s as McMurray Refining before Premier took it over. By the 1950s, it was abandoned and has sat dormant ever since. The tanks are long gone and the land is slated for new use soon, so this may be the last chance to explore the old refinery.
So we're back up here on the north side of the property now from where we entered, and we're walking along another concrete barrier here. Is this another loading dock?
Well, actually, the loading dock where they have taken this out was to somewhere around here, but that was just this side of it.
Yeah.
The rest of it was there, and it had steps, and at the time it had a building set up for a man to be working in there.
Yeah.
Who knows if they were maybe weighing stuff. I have no idea what they did on it, but it had a ramp to drive up to, and that was an area we would go up and wander around on when I was a kid.
And you got another old building back here somewhere. See it right here.
I'm not exactly sure what they used this for. I think it was more of an office complex.
Yeah.
Just because of, but there again with the garage door in it and things of that nature.
Oh yeah. Pretty cool place to pull into.
Yeah. Now what's in there now?
Yeah.
There's no telling who used it for what. Heavy structures on the top. They've got these shelves with all these different numbers on the drawers. I'm sure it had to be some sort of office complex or something, but it was here long before I was.
Bank bag. Let's check and see if the deposit's still in here.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Nothing.
We didn't get to find any silver certificates.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, this structure on top, all this steel, makes me think that they definitely wanted to make sure whatever was in here stayed.
Yes, that nothing was going to be able to mess it up with some of the weather that we get and stuff like that over the years. It's just...
Well, there's some 2019 files in here, so it's not too far back.
Nope,
I hope these aren't anything important. They're getting a little wet. Cool. What a neat old building, and I love you got the glass that has the wire in it to keep it from breaking out.
Well, and when you sit and think about it, how we were pretty much sure that this was part of it is the color of the brick on the outside compared to that structure on the far end.
Yeah.
So you knew that
Same
it was
stuff.
part of the same stuff, and then the way it was structured, that it was built solid.
It's like a little closet or shower stall or something.
Something.
Yeah. Looks like there's water coming into it.
No telling who all has put this stuff in here.
Yeah. Well, over the years,
oh yeah,
it's probably been a variety of things considering how long ago that it was that
exactly
the refinery left. Now, we've explored this building here, but the larger structures, we kind of bypass those coming in, are over here. I want to go take a look inside of there if that's all right with you.
That sounds good. We need to investigate those.
I forgot to put my boots in four-wheel drive before we came out here.
Well, and you definitely need it out here.
Yeah. All right, so now we're getting to something here that, well, I have no idea what this stuff would have been, but we've got some serious concrete structures out here. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but these weeds are coming up so high you can't really tell that I'm kind of stepping off into it now, but that's a big old hole around that structure there, and I can't tell where it really ends. But I'm going to come at it another way so we can show folks what we've got here. Possibly a place where there's a perfect little hole in the bottom of it for a pipe of some kind. And big steel reinforced concrete structure. And I'm sure if we were to look closely enough at one of those old photos, we could probably see what was in this thing at one point. You know that there must have been engineers working here. I have proof. You want to see?
Yes.
Hold on. They had the necessities.
They had the necessities, is right.
It was an oasis in the desert where native tribes gathered and may have even originated the idea of Thanksgiving years before Thanksgiving as we know it. Big Spring, Texas is this week's Expedition Texas Spotlight City. The Big Spring in Big Spring, Texas was a watering hole known to Native American tribes until Randolph B. Marcy explored it and mapped the area in 1849. He marked it as a campsite on the Overland Trail to California. This designation led to settling in the area by the 1870s, but it was an event many years before that resembled something we now know as Thanksgiving that marked some of the earliest recorded history there. Here is James Womble, Tourism Director for Big Spring.
A Spaniard by the name of Cabaza de Vaca, who set sail in 1528 with 300 men and 5 ships. He ended up in Big Spring and went through quite a bit, but some natives found him roughly a decade later and nursed him back to health, and he met up with his crewmen and came back to host a festival of celebration and thankfulness, as they called it, with the local natives. So about 85 years before what we know as Thanksgiving, it was practiced and celebrated right here at the spring in Big Spring, Texas.
And with the discovery of oil in the 1920s and the boom that continued until the 1950s, Big Spring was a boomtown for many years. This gave birth to massive growth and even paved the way for the luxurious skyscraping Hotel Settles. Big Spring was also home to Webb Air Force Base, and in 1969 was featured in the film Midnight Cowboy, starring Dustin Hoffman and John Voight. Today things have slowed down in Big Spring, but there are plenty of reasons to make the trip to town.
We'd love to have you. We're welcome, we're friendly. Come by and see why we say we have the second best sunsets.
Who has the first best sunsets?
You tell us.
Big Spring State Park, the Hotel Settles, and so much more. Just a few reasons why Big Spring is this week's Expedition Texas Spotlight City. We're in Arp, Texas, exploring the ruins of the Premier Refinery there. All the metal has been removed from the refinery. Tanks and pipes and other features found their way to the scrapyard decades ago. What remains is an apocalyptic array of concrete structures that once played a part in refining that East Texas crude.
And as we come up this way toward this other brick building here, we have more of these concrete structures, which we have no idea what they really were, but they might have held a vessel of some type of pressurization. And now, being the uneducated person that I am, I would say this structure right here was probably the gazebo where you go have lunch on your break when you're working at the refinery. Although I'd probably still, once again, be wrong. But let's go check this out.
This old building probably was a control room of some site just because of the structure on that panel back there.
Oh wow, yeah, there is a panel back there.
You can tell that there was, some sort of dials of something, temperature gauges, whatever, pressure gauges, all in here. So.
Wow. Yeah, and the wiring would have come through the back.
Wiring would have come through the back.
And then, just like an old transmitter site or whatever, is the area where you can go behind and work on them and rewire them if needed.
Absolutely. And they were smart enough to put a window in back there so you could be able to see.
You know that there must have been engineers working here.
It had to have been.
I have proof. You want to see?
Yes.
Hold on. They had the necessities.
They had the necessities, is right.
Definitely. Terry, I think this would make a really good hideout for like a clubhouse, I mean, I'm surprised you and your friends didn't do that when you were out here back in the day.
Well, I guess we didn't think about it, otherwise we probably would have.
All right, let's just follow that concrete and see where it goes then.
Sounds good. These people must have had very, very, very short feet.
Look at those steps.
I know it.
I mean, if you fall down them, it'd happen real fast.
In a hurry.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, sir. He held the door open for me. Did you see that? True gentleman right there. Here we are down into tank.
Well, whatever it had something solid here that was attached to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, more bolts.
Yeah.
There are bolts everywhere in this place. All we have to do now is kind of trek our way out of here. And I'd be interested to show this to anybody, maybe put this episode out there and let folks look at it, and people that used to work in this industry that would know what some of these pieces and components are. and buildings are falling down, and nature is slowly reclaiming this place as her own. But what a cool thing to come out and see what was such a big part of oil and gas production in East Texas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you sit and think it, next decade, this area would be 100 years old.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for showing us around,
yes, sir.
man.
Enjoyed it.
And if you don't mind, can you show me the way out of here?
We can do that.
Okay, let's do that. I'll follow you. How about that?
Sounds good.
The wealth generated by the East Texas oil field remains today, even though many of the industries have died off. The railroad, which was key to the transport of new residents and the oil products they came to find, has only a few remaining lines. The oil wells, once so numerous, have either slowed to only pump occasionally or have been capped. Mega refineries like the one in Tyler still turn oil into the products that we use every day. In the 1930s, East Texas got rich quick. We learned terribly hard lessons about how to work with our valuable natural resources, and we humbled ourselves as oil discoveries were made elsewhere and attention turned to those valuable oil fields. The history of the East Texas oil field is on display at the East Texas Oil Museum at Kilgore College. Your journey, like ours, will take you to places like New London Museum, Joinerville, and beyond to learn the history of the oil boom in East Texas. Down the road, there's another lost legend waiting to be explored, and on Expedition Texas, we're going to find it.